Picture the cleanest woman in England. Now understand that she bathes once a month, whether she needs it or no, and that this makes her a marvel, a scandal, almost a heretic of cleanliness. Add a bedchamber sealed against night air because night air kills. Add teeth already going grey from sugar, rubbed daily with a cloth dipped in honey. Add a body wrapped in linen that must be changed, boiled, bleached and pressed by hands that will never, ever be seen. Add rooms perfumed with rosewater and civet, built directly above a river that carries the city's dung past the windows twice a day with the tide. That is the court of Queen Elizabeth I in the year 1560. The most gorgeous place in the kingdom. The most fragrant. And underneath the fragrance, a place that would kill you in a week. Quietly, politely, without ever raising its voice. A place where you could touch cloth worth more than your village in the morning and be turned out to starve by evening for a single stain nobody can explain. We're going back there tonight, not as tourists gawking at the gowns and the pearls. We're going in through the back, through the wet, steaming, knuckle-splitting underside of royal cleanliness. 1 week, one person, everything she would have seen, smelled, scrubbed, and survived. Or not survived. That part is genuinely in question. So, I make these history stories, and honestly, I still have no idea whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just quietly fascinated by the fact that the most powerful woman in England owned exactly one bathtub and used it roughly as often as you renew a passport. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The lie is eating your hands again. You noticed it an hour ago. A hot thread of pain along the split in your right thumb, and you've not stopped working. Because stopping is not a thing that happens in this room. The wash-house of Whitehall Palace does not stop. The fires under the coppers do not go out. The steam does not clear. And the Queen's linen does not wait for a 16-year-old girl's thumb to close up. Your name is Joan Marbury. You're 16 years old, you've been at Whitehall for 6 days, and you are, as of this week, the newest and lowest pair of hands in the service of Mistress Anne Twist, laundress of the Queen's own body linen. Not the sheets, not the tablecloths, the smocks, the things that touch the Queen's actual skin. There are perhaps 5 people in England below the rank of lady who are permitted to handle these things, and somehow, through your aunt's service, and a letter, and a great deal of luck you don't fully understand yet, you are one of them. You were told this was an honour. Nobody mentioned the lie. Your hands are in it now, up to the wrists in a wooden buck tub of water so hot it went past pain a while ago and settled into a deep humming ache. Water milky grey with wood ash lye and stinking faintly of the sheep fat soap melting into it in soft yellow curds. The smock under your fingers is fine Holland linen, woven so tight and so thin you can see the shadow of your own hand through it. When you lift it dripping into the light, it weighs almost nothing dry. Wet, it drags at your wrists like a live thing trying to swim back down. And there is a mark on it, at the left shoulder, a pale yellowish ghost of a mark. And Mistress Twist has told you twice already that if that mark is still there at noon, it will not be the smock that is thrown out. She didn't smile when she said it. You've learned in 6 days that Mistress Twisty does not make jokes about linen. Understand what this smock is. This is not underwear the way you'd think of underwear. In 1560, linen is the washing. The Queen's body is cleaned not mainly with water but with cloth, fresh white linen put on against the skin every single day. sometimes twice a day, to draw the sweat and the oil and the sourness out of her, the way a wick draws oil out of a lamp. The physicians all agree on this. Water opens the pores, and open pores let in pestilence, plague, the sweating sickness, the French pox, everything foul that floats in the air of a crowded city. Full body bathing in water is a risk you take rarely and carefully, like surgery. But linen, boiled, bleached, sun-whitened linen, that is safe. That is medicine. A clean shift is a bath you can wear, which means that you, Joan Marbury, with your split thumb and your 6 days of service, are not doing laundry. You are, in the eyes of everyone above you, performing something halfway between medicine and religion. The whiteness of the Queen's linen is the health of the Queen's body, and the health of the Queen's body is the safety of the whole realm, because Elizabeth Tudor is 26 years old, unmarried, without an heir, and every crowned head in Europe is waiting for her to die. If she sickens, England shakes. If she dies, England burns. And this morning, there is a yellow mark on her smock that you cannot explain, and it is your job to make it not exist. You haul the smock out of the buck tub and slap it down on the slanted wooden washboard, and the sound is a heavy wet crack that you feel in your elbows. Steam rolls off the cloth. You take the soap, a hard grey-yellow lump the size of your fist, Castile at the edges where it's fine and mutton fat at the core where it's cheap, and you work it into the mark with the heel of your hand, pressing, dragging, pressing, and the split in your thumb opens a little wider and the lie finds it, and you make a small sound through your teeth and keep going. Across the wash-house, through the steam, Mistress Twisty is watching you without looking at you. She's a square woman of maybe 50, forearms like a waterman's, a face boiled smooth and pink by 30 years of this room, and hands so scarred and bleached and hardened that when she took your chin on your first morning to look you over, her fingers felt like wood. She has served the Queen's linen since the Queen was a suspected traitor under her sister Mary, back when washing for the Lady Elizabeth was a job that could get a woman questioned. She kept the linen white through all of it. She has one rule, delivered to you on that first morning, and she made you say it back to her. Nothing goes onto the Queen's body that has not passed through my hands and yours, and nothing goes onto the Queen's body with a mark on it that we cannot name. At the time you thought it was pride. Craftswoman's pride, a laundress guarding her reputation. It took you 2 days to understand it's not pride, it's fear. Because a mark you cannot name on cloth that touches the Queen's skin is not a laundry problem. In this year, in this court, an unexplained substance on the royal body linen is a question for men with quiet voices and cold rooms. Poison soaks into cloth. Everyone knows this. Half of Europe believes the Queen of England can be murdered through her gloves, her saddle, her pillow, her shift. Just 2 years ago, the whole court whispered about poisoned gifts. There are men whose entire employment is to imagine the ways it could be done, and every single way runs through rooms like this one and hands like yours. You're 16. You have been here 6 days, and you're beginning to understand that you have not been given a job. You've been given a place to stand where every kind of blame rolls downhill and stops. The mark is fading. You press the cloth flat against the board and lean your whole weight through your arms, and you can see it going, dissolving into the grey water, and something in your chest unclenches 1/2 inch. You douse the smock back into the buck tub, swirl it, lift it, hold the shoulder up toward the high window where the March light comes through, thick with steam. Gone, almost gone, a ghost of a ghost, not good enough. Almost gone is a phrase that does not exist in this room, so it goes into the bucking basket with the rest of today's whites, to be laid in the great buck tub in layers with fresh ash lye poured through, hours of it, then hauled out to the drying ground to bleach in the sun, because sunlight is the last soap, the one that costs nothing and works while you do something else. By tomorrow the mark will not exist. By tomorrow, if God is kind, it will never have existed at all. You straighten up, and your back informs you in detail that you're 16 going on 60. Your shift is soaked through and stuck to your spine. Your feet, in wooden patterns over your shoes, have been wet since before dawn. The skin across your knuckles is red and tight and shining, and by summer, Mistress Twisty has promised you, it will have cracked and healed so many times it will stop bothering to feel anything at all. You've earned a breath. You take one, and that is when the boy from the chamber comes running into the washhouse with mud on his stockings and terror on his face, and says the words that end your morning. The Queen has asked for her bath. You have to understand what those words do to this end of the palace. The Queen has asked for her bath is not an instruction. It is an earthquake with a schedule. A royal bath in 1560 is not a woman getting into water. It is a military operation involving fire, fuel, plumbing, herbs, linen, timing, and roughly a dozen people, every one of whom can be ruined if any part of it goes wrong, and most of whom will spend the whole of it invisible, because the entire point of royal luxury is that it appears to happen by itself. Elizabeth bathes perhaps once a month. Some at court say once a month whether she need it or no, and they say it half in awe and half in scandal, because once a month is a lot. Once a month is eccentric. Her own father bathed in his great sunken bath at Hampton Court. Yes, but he was a king and a giant and did as he pleased. Most of the lords sweating in their silks around this palace go from Christmas to Christmas without full immersion and consider themselves the better for it. The Queen's habit of regular bathing is discussed the way you discuss a mild, dangerous hobby. Admirable, foreign, risky, because the physicians are clear, and the physicians are unanimous, and the physicians are wrong, but nobody will know that for 300 years. Hot water opens the pores of the body. Open pores admit corrupted air. Corrupted air, miasma, the invisible rot that drifts off marshes and middens and sick men's breath, is what causes disease. Every disease, from the smallpox to the plague itself. A hot bath, in the medical understanding of this century, is the deliberate opening of every door and window of the body in a city where the air itself is trying to kill you. It is done rarely, briefly, and with precautions the way you'd handle gunpowder, and it is done with water that has to come from somewhere, which is where your week gets worse, because you have seen where the water comes from. Whitehall is enormous. Understand the scale of it. It is not a building. It is a small, dishonest town, the biggest palace in Europe by sprawl. More than 1,000 rooms stitched together along the Thames, galleries and kitchens and tennis courts and a cockpit and a tilt yard, all of it leaking servants at every seam, some 1,500 souls to feed and water on an ordinary day. Water comes in on conduits, lead pipes running from springs away in the fields past Charing Cross, and the conduit water is for the kitchens and the Queen, and almost nobody else. Everyone else makes do with the river. The river. You grew up on a river in Kent, a real one, green and cold with trout in it. The Thames at Westminster is not that. The Thames at Westminster is the largest open sewer in the kingdom, a broad brown muscle of water that takes in the runoff of every gutter, every jakes, every shambles and tannery and dye house from Windsor to the sea, and then, twice a day, the tide turns and pushes it all back up past the palace windows for a second viewing. At low tide on a warm day, the smell comes up off the mud like a physical presence, like a wet animal leaning on you. The palace pretends not to notice. The palace burns juniper and rosemary and braziers and stuffs its nosegays with orange peel and cloves, and the gentlemen hold their pomanders to their faces, little pierced silver apples full of ambergris and musk, and everyone agrees not to say the obvious thing, which is that the most refined court in the world is built on the lip of a latrine. So the bath water will be conduit water, sweet water, carried in, heated in the great coppers, hauled bucket by bucket, up the back stairs by grooms who will be sweating like plough horses inside 10 minutes, along a route planned so that not one of them crosses the path of anyone who matters. And the bath itself, in the Queen's bathing chamber near her bedchamber on the privy side of the palace, a deep wooden tub like a half-barrel lined. This is the detail that stopped you breathing when Mistress Twist first described it. Lined entirely in linen. Soft, thick, white linen sheeted over the wood so that no plank, no splinter, no surface that has ever touched anything else in the world touches the Queen. A linen tent hangs over the whole thing to hold in the steam and keep out the air. The murderous air. Sponges. Herbs sewn into muslin bags. Rosemary and chamomile and sweet marjoram, bobbing in the water like drowned gardens. And all of that linen, every sheet and towel and cloth of it, comes out of this wash-house, which means all of it comes this week, partly through your hands. Mistress Twisty has crossed the room before the boy finishes his message. She doesn't run. You have a feeling she has never run in her life, that running is a thing that happens to other people. But she moves like weather, and the whole wash-house reorganizes around her as she comes. She takes stock out loud, not to you exactly, to the room. Bath sheets 6, in the press since Candlemas, to be aired and warmed. Head towels 4, body cloths a dozen. The tub linens boiled fresh, no starch, starch scratches. The Queen's bathing smock, and the dry smock for after, and the night smock, warmed at the fire, and God help the girl who scorches it. Then her eyes find you through the steam, and she says the sentence you will hear in your sleep for the rest of your life. You'll carry to the door, she says. You've clean hands and a plain face, and you don't gawp. You'll go up with the linen as far as the door, and you'll hand it in, and you will look at the floor, and you will not exist. Do you understand me, girl? From the moment you leave this room until the moment you come back to it, you do not exist. You say, yes, mistress. Your voice comes out smaller than you meant it to. Here is the thing they don't tell you about serving greatness, the thing you are learning at speed this week. The luxury of the great is made of the invisibility of the small. The Queen's rooms are cleaned before she wakes and after she leaves. Her fires are laid by men she never sees. Her linen is washed by women whose name she will never learn, whose split thumbs and lie-burned wrists are the actual price of the whiteness against her skin, and the whole architecture of the palace, the back stairs, the servants' passages, the timing of the bells, exists to make sure the price is never visible. Cleanliness must appear to be a property of the Queen's own body, a miracle of her person. It cannot be seen to be work because work is done by people, and people near the royal body are risks, and risks must not exist. You're not allowed to be seen doing the work that keeps the Queen alive. Sit with that a moment, because that is the whole engine of this place, and then get moving. because Mistress Twist is already loading your arms. The bath sheets come out of the linen press, warm and impossibly heavy, dense woven, each one big enough to wrap a horse, smelling of lavender and the faint hot iron smell of the press itself. Stacked to your chin, they weigh as much as a small child, and they block half your sight, and you will carry them up 3 flights of back stairs and along 200 yards of passage without letting one corner, one thread, one breadth of them touch a wall, a rail, or another human being. Mistress Twisty puts a linen cloth over the top of the stack against dust and settles the whole load into your arms like a woman handing over a relic. Slowly, she says, "You've time. A stumble costs more than a delay." And Joan, it's the first time she has used your name. Something in your spine goes cold and attentive. If anyone speaks to you on the stair, she says, anyone at all, you say you're about the Queen's business and you keep walking. You take nothing from anyone's hand. You let no one touch the linen. No one. Not a lady, not a lord, not a bishop, not an angel of God. It goes from my hands to yours, to the door of the bathing chamber, and nowhere else on this earth. You want to ask why. You are 16, not stupid. The shape of the Y is already forming in your stomach, cold and specific. But she has already turned back to the coppers, and the boy from the chamber is holding the door, and the passage beyond is dark and long and smells of tallow smoke and old stone. And your week, which you thought was hard yesterday, is about to show you what hard actually means. You walk. The back stairs of Whitehall are a world with their own weather. The great galleries above, the ones you've glimpsed exactly once through a briefly opened door, are broad and light, hung with tapestry, floored with rush matting woven so fine it looks like cloth. The back stairs are none of that. They are narrow enough that 2 people cannot pass without turning their shoulders, dark enough that tallow candles gutter in wall brackets even at midday, and they carry in both directions at all hours the entire hidden bloodstream of the palace. Coal coming up, ash coming down, chamber pots coming down, and you learn very quickly to hear the particular careful footstep of a groom carrying one, and to flatten yourself against the wall with your linen turned away. Food going up under covered dishes, wood, water, candles, clean linen, dirty linen, and threaded through all of it. Message boys moving at a half run with faces that say don't ask. The stone steps are hollowed in the middle, actually worn into curves, each tread dished like a spoon by 100 years of feet, and your pattens went off at the stair foot so you feel every hollow through your thin shoes. The air changes as you climb. At the bottom, wet stone, lie, river. 1 flight up, roast meat and wood smoke bleeding through from the kitchen ranges. A wall of warmth that makes your empty stomach clench and gurgle loud enough to embarrass you in front of nobody. Another flight, and the smell turns to beeswax and rosemary and something sweeter underneath. Civet, musk. The perfume worn by people whose faces you will never see, hanging in the air of the passage like the ghost of wealth. Your arms have gone from aching to burning to a kind of distant roar. The bath sheets seem to gain a pound with every landing. You hold them the way Mistress Twist showed you, low against your body, elbows in, chin resting on the top of the stack to steady it, and you count doorways because she made you say the route back to her twice before you left. 3rd landing, left along the low passage. Past the door with the iron studs, that's the silver scullery, never stop there. Up the 4 odd steps where the old palace meets the new. Then the long gallery passage, servant's side, and at the end of it, a door with a groom of the chamber standing at it. And that door is as far as you go, as far as anyone like you goes, ever. Halfway along the low passage, someone speaks to you. You've been so deep in the counting that the voice hits you like a hand on the shoulder. A man's voice, easy, amused, coming from a doorway you were about to pass, and it says, "Well now, that's a deal of linen for one small maid." You keep walking. You actually manage it. For 3 steps, eyes on the floor, heart slamming. The Queen's business, the Queen's business. And then he steps out of the doorway into the passage in front of you, and you either stop or walk into him. So you stop. Fine, dark wool. That's what you see first, because you're looking down, and that's what fills your vision. The hem of a gown of very fine dark wool, and good leather shoes, dry, which on a wet March day means a man who has not been outside, which means a man who lives up here. Not a lord, the wool is plain. A clerk, maybe, a gentleman's secretary, one of the hundreds of clever, hungry, middling men who fill the middle floors of this palace like wasps in a wall, all of them climbing, all of them looking for a handhold. "For the bath, is it?" he says. Not a question. So it's true then. Today. You say nothing. Your arms scream. The linen cloth over the top of your stack has slipped a finger's width and you don't dare adjust it. He's quiet for a moment, and in the quiet you can hear him thinking, and you understand suddenly, with a clarity that frightens you, that the timing of the Queen's bath is information, and information in this palace is money. Who is admitted to the privy lodgings today? Whether the Queen keeps to her chamber, whether she is well, whether she is not well, whether the rumours, and there are always rumours about the body of an unmarried queen, every month, every ache, every pale morning fed straight into the ciphered letters of ambassadors, whether the rumours are true. The Spanish ambassador pays for scraps like this. So does the French. There are people in this building whose whole living is made of knowing what the Queen's body did today. And here you are, 16 years old, carrying the answer up a back stair in your aching arms. "Heavy load," he says, gently now, kindly. "Set it down a moment on the sill there. Rest your arms. I'll see nobody troubles you." And this is the moment. You will think about this moment for years, because he sounds kind, and your arms are dying, and the windowsill is right there, wide and clean, and every muscle from your neck to your wrists is begging, and you're 6 days into a place whose rules you barely know, facing a grown man of rank in a passage where no one would ever take your word against his. You take nothing from anyone's hand. You let no one touch the linen. Not a lord, not a bishop, not an angel of God. You drop your eyes lower to the floor between his good dry shoes, and you say, in a voice like a mouse under a floorboard, "I'm about the Queen's business, sir, by your leave." And you step, not around him exactly, because there isn't room, but into the space beside him so directly that he must either move or be walked into by a laundry-maid, and moving costs him nothing, and standing costs him dignity, so he moves. A half step. Enough. You walk. You don't look back. Behind you, after a moment, you hear him laugh. One soft breath of a laugh, and you can't read it. Whether it's approval or contempt or a man filing your face away for later, and you will not know which for some days yet. Your hands have gone past pain into shaking. You make the 4 odd steps. You make the long passage. And at the end of it, exactly as promised, a door. And at the door, a groom of the chamber in the Queen's livery, scarlet and black. A man of maybe 30 with a halberd leaned in the corner, and the professionally empty face of someone whose job is to stand where interesting things happen and see none of them. He looks at you. He looks at the linen. He raps twice at the door, soft, with one knuckle, and the door opens on warmth and light and a wall of scent, rosemary and hot water and beeswax, and a woman's hands come out, smooth hands, ringed hands, the hands of a lady, and take the bath sheets off your arms so suddenly that you nearly pitch forward into the doorway after them, your muscles unable to believe their sentence has been commuted. You get 1/2 second of a glimpse past her, and it isn't much. Firelight, a great copper gleaming, the white cloud of the linen tent over the tub, steam moving in lamplight like slow smoke, and then the door is shut, and you're standing in a dark passage with empty, screaming arms and your heart going like a drum. That's it. That's your part of a royal bath. You never see the Queen. Of course you never see the Queen. You will work in this palace for years in time, and you will be able to count on one hand the occasions you see her closer than a courtyard's width away. What you see is the door. What you serve is the door. On the far side of it, the ladies of the bedchamber, women whose fathers are earls, are doing with their own noble hands the actual washing of the actual Queen, because that intimacy is itself a prize, fought over, scheduled, resented, the right to hold the sponge, to warm the smock, to comb out the long red gold hair afterward with an ivory comb and work through it. This is true. Powdered ash and ground orris root, brushing the powder through to lift the grease, because you do not wash hair a month from a head cold. Everyone knows wet hair in March is a death warrant. Dry cleaning 100 strokes until the powder has drunk the oil and been brushed away, and the hair shines like metal. Behind that door, the most looked-at woman in Europe is being maintained like a cathedral. And out here in the dark, the maintenance of the maintainers, the hauling and boiling and bleaching that makes it all possible, turns and goes back down the stairs on wet feet, because the buck tub doesn't tend itself, and there will be a mountain of bath linen coming down damp by evening, and every sheet of it will need to be boiled again before it sleeps. Going down, your knees do a thing on the hollowed steps that they have never done before, a small liquid wobble at each drop, and you think, 6 days. It has been 6 days. A week has 7. You have no idea yet what day 7 is going to do to you. But before we get to day 7, you need to understand how you got here and what your body has already been through, because your week did not begin with a bath. It began 6 days ago with a gate. You came up from Kent on the back of a carrier's cart, jolting for 2 days on sacks of hops, with a bundle of clothes, a letter from your aunt sewn into your bodice for safekeeping, and 8 pence. Your aunt spent 20 years in the laundry at Greenwich and left with a bent back, ruined hands, and one priceless possession, the goodwill of Anne Twist. That goodwill, folded into a letter, is the entire foundation of your life. You're here because one old woman remembered another old woman fondly. That is how every position in this palace is filled, from the Lord Chamberlain down to the boy who kills rats. There are no advertisements. There is only who you know and who owes whom, and whether your face makes trouble. The first thing London did was hit you in the nose. You smelled it from 3 miles out, a brown smudge on the air, coal smoke and tanneries and the river, and by the time the cart ground in through Southwark, the smell had become a fact of the world like weather. 200,000 people, give or take, packed inside and spilling out of the old walls, more people than you had ever imagined existing, all of them burning sea coal, all of them emptying pots, all of them alive at once. Your village in Kent holds perhaps 90 souls. You did the arithmetic on the cart and then stopped because the number frightened you. The second thing London did was show you its idea of clean, and this is the part you must understand, because everything else this week rests on it. London in 1560 is not filthy because Londoners are filthy. Londoners are, by their own lights, exhaustingly clean. There are laws, real laws with real fines, about sweeping the street before your door, about where you may and may not dump, about the carting away of dung, and there are men called rakers paid by each ward to shovel the streets and haul the muck to great steaming lay stalls outside the walls, where it is sold profitably to farmers, because the city's filth is the countryside's fertiliser, an entire economy of waste flowing outward like a tide. People wash. They wash their hands before every meal, and after, always, publicly at table, with the ewer and basin brought round, because you eat with your fingers from shared dishes, and a man who came to meat with unwashed hands would be marked as a beast. They wash their faces every morning. They scrub their teeth with cloths and toothsticks. They comb their heads religiously and not for vanity. A fine-toothed comb of bone or boxwood is a weapon of war, and the war is against lice, and everyone, from the beggar at the gate to the counsellors of the Queen, is fighting it. What they do not do is get into water, and it isn't stupidity, and it isn't sloth. It's medicine, it's memory, and it's arithmetic. The medicine you've heard. Open pores, corrupted air, the body as a fortress whose gates must be kept shut in a city under siege by invisible rot. The memory is this. There used to be baths, public ones, hot ones, the stews of Southwark and Moorgate, steam and basins and company, an institution as old as the Romans, and within living memory they were shut because they had become, frankly, brothels, and because when the great pox, the French disease, began burning through Europe 2 generations ago, the bathhouses were exactly where it spread, hot skin to hot skin, and the physicians and the preachers for once agreed, and the doors were nailed up. Your grandmother could remember bathing in company for a penny. You cannot. In one lifetime the whole apparatus of public washing vanished, and what remained was the basin, the cloth, and the shift. And the arithmetic is the simplest of all. Hot water is expensive. Water must be carried, from a conduit if you're lucky, from the river if you're not, at 3 gallons a trip on a yoke that eats your shoulders, and then it must be heated, and fuel costs money, sea coal by the sack, firewood dearer every year as the forests near London go under the axe. A full hot bath for one body is perhaps 20-30 gallons carried and heated. For a labouring family that is not hygiene, that is a feast. So you wash the way the whole island washes, a basin, a jug, a cloth. Cold water more often than warm, face and hands daily, neck and ears, and the rest of the body in pieces, standing on a cold floor in a cold room quickly, and the shift does the rest. Linen against skin, changed as often as you can afford linen, and the whiteness of your collar and cuffs displayed at wrist and throat like a certificate. Behold, I am a clean person. In this world you wear your hygiene where it can be inspected, which brings us to the palace where you now live, and where all of these rules apply, but stretched to the scale of a small city and sharpened to the edge of a knife. 1,500 people, more or less, breathe inside Whitehall on an ordinary day. Courtiers, councillors, chaplains, guards, cooks, scullions, grooms, pages, laundresses, rat-catchers, the men who tend the clocks, 1,500 bodies, and, this is not a joke, nowhere near 1,500 places to relieve them. There are privies, garderobes, closets with close stools. There is even, In the sprawl of the old buildings are great common jakes of many seats over a drain to the river. It is not enough. It has never been enough. The stairwells of the palace, the corners of the outer courtyards, the dark ends of certain passages, all of them acquire, despite orders, despite fines, despite notices, a smell that every servant knows and no courtier acknowledges. The court is fragrant at nose height and foul at ankle height, and everyone lives suspended between the two, in a fog of rosewater fighting a rising tide. And here is the fact that organises your entire existence, the fact that explains the carts in the courtyard and the lists being drawn up in the offices and the faint air of packing that hangs over the whole palace this week. The court moves constantly, Whitehall to Greenwich, Greenwich to Richmond, Richmond to Hampton Court, round and round the year, and one of the reasons, one of the real, unspoken, load-bearing reasons, is that after some weeks of 1,500 bodies, a palace becomes uninhabitable. The polite word is that the house must be sweetened. What it means is that the moment the court rides out, an army of men you will never see descends with shovels and barrows and lime, empties the pits, scours the drains, scrapes the courtyards, burns the fouled rushes, and airs the great rooms for weeks until the building is fit to hold a court again. The most glittering institution in England migrates like a herd, because it grazes a palace down to the dirt and must move on before the dirt rises to meet it. Nobody says this at dinner. At dinner they say the Queen desires the air of Greenwich. You learned all of this in 6 days, the way you learn the heat of a stove by touch. And you learned your own place in it, bottom of the clean trade, because there is a hierarchy even in washing. The great wash, sheets and board cloths and towels for the household is done by contract women, big crews, riverside. Above them, the wardrobe women who keep the woolens and silks, which are never washed at all, never. You do not put water to a silk gown worth a manor farm. You brush it, air it, hang it in the smoke of burning juniper, pick the seams for lice, and sponge the sweat stains at the armpits with lye and urine. Yes, stale urine. Collected, aged, the best grease cutter known to man, and the gown goes back to its lord smelling of juniper and ready for another month against unwashed skin. And above everyone, in a room apart with locks, Mistress Twist and her 3 women and now you, the body linen, the smocks, the ruffs underprops, the night gear, the cloths of the Queen's own person, including, and no one blushes, because it is simply the work, the cloths for the Queen's monthly courses, whose regular appearance in the wash is itself a state secret of the First Order, reported on, you would not believe this, but it is true, by ambassadors to their kings. Philip of Spain has received intelligence, gathered at second hand from laundry gossip, regarding the regularity of the Queen of England's cycles, because on that regularity hangs the question of heirs, and on heirs hangs the peace of Europe. You wash diplomacy, you wring out statecraft and hang it in the sun. 6 days ago you did not know any of this. 6 days ago you were a girl on a cart with 8 pence. Tonight you will lie down on a straw pallet in a room with 3 other laundry women under the roof leads, your hands throbbing in time with your heart, your shoulders full of hot gravel, and you will sleep like something dropped down a well. But between now and tonight, there is the drying ground, and there is Nan, and there is the first time somebody tells you out loud what happened to the girl whose place you took. The drying ground sits behind the wash-house, a walled yard of scrubbed grass and hedges of rosemary and lavender grown waist-high, and the hedges are not decoration. Linen is dried spread over them, so that the sun bleaches it from above, while the bruised leaves breathe scent into it from below. And a smock that has spent an afternoon on a rosemary hedge in March wind comes in smelling like something from a better world. There are also lines, and there are tenter frames for the big sheets, and there is a wall with broken glass mortared along the top, and there is a lock on the gate, and there is, at all hours of daylight, one of Mistress Twister's women sitting in the corner on a stool, with mending in her lap and both eyes open. Because linen walks. White linen of the finest Holland is money, straight money. A single royal smock represents weeks of a weaver's work, and would sell in a heartbeat in any market in Europe, and beyond money, the Queen's linen is her. A cloth that has touched the royal body is to half the minds of this century a thing of power. There are people who would buy it for witchcraft, and the court believes in witchcraft the way it believes in Tuesday. Wax images, nail pairings, a queen's shift, unwashed, carrying the sweat of her body, in the wrong hands, in the belief of the age, that is a weapon aimed at her life. This is why the dirty linen is counted out and the clean linen is counted in, every piece, every day, against a tally kept in 2 books by 2 people, and a missing cloth is not a nuisance, it is an alarm. You're pegging out towels when Nan tells you about your predecessor. Nan is the youngest of Mistress Twister's women besides you, maybe 22, a Londoner from Wapping with a fast mouth and forearms already going hard and ropey like the mistresses, and she has decided in the offhand way of someone adopting a stray cat that you are hers to instruct. She talks constantly, in a low flat stream pitched exactly to be inaudible at 10 feet, and in 6 days she has taught you more than anyone. Which grooms will carry a heavy basket for a smile, and which will want more than a smile, where the second best beer is drawn. How to hold your hands in cold water at the end of the day, exactly this long and no longer, to take the swelling out of the knuckles without setting the ache. The girl before you, Nan says, around the peg in her teeth, was called Meg. Good worker. Quick. Been in the room over a year. Wind cracks the sheet between you like a sail. You wait. Ironing day, Nan says. Candlemas week. She had the smoothing iron on the good smocks, and there were press of work and somewhere in it one scorch. Not black, mind, not a burn through. A gold shadow size of a thumbnail on the shoulder fold, where the box pleats double the cloth and hold the heat. You know already, from 6 days of it, exactly how that happens. The smoothing irons heat on a stand at the fire. You work with 2, one in use and one heating, and the whole craft of it is in the testing. Spit on a fingertip touch quick to the iron's face, the hiss read like a sentence, or the iron held an inch from your cheek to feel its breath, and then the first stroke made on a rag, always on a rag, never on the good linen, because linen scorches in the time it takes to answer a question. Meg was asked a question. Someone in the doorway, some errand, some counting matter, and she turned her head, and the iron rested where it stood for the length of one sentence, on cloth instead of on its stand. One sentence, Nan says. That's the whole story. One sentence, one gold thumbnail, and a royal smock is spoiled, and a spoiled smock is money gone. But that's not the thing. The thing is that Mistress Twister must present the linen perfect and account for the fault, and the fault has a name, and the name goes upward. Carelessness, near the Queen's body. That's the phrase, do you see? Not a scorch mark. Carelessness near the Queen's body. Same words they'd use if you left a door unbarred or a strange man in a passage. There's no small version of it. Not in this room. And Meg, you say. Gone by evening, Nan says. Wages to the day, character letter, and the letter, mind, was fair. The mistress isn't cruel. The letter said honest and hard-working, and it did not say the other thing, and it did not need to. Because the first question any household asks is, why did she leave the Queen's service? And there is no good answer to that question. Last I heard, she was washing for an inn in Southwark. From the Queen's smocks to tavern sheets in one sentence's time. Nan pegs the towel corner, snaps the cloth flat with a crack, and looks at you for the first time in the whole telling. I'm not saying it to fright you, she says, which is a lie. She is saying it exactly to fright you, because frighted girls are careful girls, and careful girls keep the whole room safe. I'm saying it so you know what the mistress knows. She didn't turn Meg out for a scorch. She turned Meg out because when the mark went upward with Meg's name on it, that was the wall holding. One name, one girl, done, finished, forgotten. If the mistress had fought for her, if the fault had gone up with no name on it, then the question comes down instead. Who has charge of that room? Who chose those hands? What else happens in there that we don't hear of? Do you see? The room lives because someone can always be given. That's what we are, chick. We're what the room can afford to lose. The wind moves through the rosemary and the wet linen, and the smell is extraordinary. Cold and green and clean beyond anything, and you stand in the middle of it with your ruined hands full of pegs, and you think about the yellow mark on this morning's smock, the one you scrubbed out, the one that is bleaching on the hedge not 10 feet from where you stand, and your stomach does a slow, cold roll. Because you got it out, but you never found out what it was, and you didn't tell anyone that. You had meant to. You had meant to say, Mistress, it looked like grease, or wax, maybe. Tallow from a candle, someone's drip in the carrying, that would be nothing. That happens. But the morning had detonated into the bath and the stairs and the man in the passage, and the mark had come out clean, gone, no harm, and the moment for telling had somehow closed behind you without a sound, the way doors close in this place, a mark we cannot name. Nothing goes to the Queen with a mark we cannot name. It's out, you tell yourself. It's gone. Bleached, boiled, gone. A drip of tallow. Nothing. You will spend tonight lying on your pallet listening to the other women breathe, and the rain starting on the leads a foot above your face, telling yourself that word. Nothing. And some part of you, the part that grew up in a village where everyone knew everything and no door ever fully closed, that part will lie awake asking the question you can't put down. A drip of tallow falls on the outside of a folded smock. This mark was on the inside of the fold, on the part that lies against the skin. How does a drip fall on the inside of a fold? Sleep takes you before you find an answer, because your body is 16 and has been standing for 19 hours, and there are mercies even here. But the question does not go anywhere. It lies down next to you like a dog, and it is there in the morning waiting, when the bells wake you in the dark, and the 7th day of your first week begins. The bells that wake you belong to the Abbey, away across the leads and rooftops at Westminster, and to a dozen city churches behind them, near and far, deep and shrill. And they do not agree with each other about the hour, they never do. They overlap and argue and trail off, and under them, closer, you hear the palace itself waking. Boots on stairs, the first barrows in the woodyard, a pump handle somewhere clanking like a slow bell of its own. It is black dark. It is perhaps 5. The attic room under the leads holds 4 pallets, one small window glazed with horn, a chest, and a rushlight, and it holds cold the way a cellar holds cold. But you have learned the palace's one great mercy for its laundry women, which is this: you are never far from hot water. down in the wash-house before dawn while the first copper heats, there's a basin of warm water for the women of the room, and this, you have realised, makes you cleaner than almost anyone in the palace above you. Cleaner than gentlemen. Cleaner, in plain fact of skin, than some lords. You wash your face and neck and ears while the dark is still solid outside. You scrub your teeth with a rag and a fingertip of salt. You comb your hair back tight under your coif with the fine comb, dragging it slow through the strands close to the scalp and inspecting the teeth by rushlight after every pass, because the palace is a city, and the city has lice and the war is daily. And then you put on yesterday's wool over today's clean linen smock, because you have 2 smocks to your name and you rotate them like a great lady. One on, one washing, your own small copy of the system you serve. Clean linen against your skin, even for you, even at the bottom. The whole country runs on that one feeling, the cool, dry slide of a fresh smock going on in the cold dark. And whatever else this week has done to you, it has given you that feeling every single morning, and you would be lying if you said it was nothing. It is not nothing. It is the one luxury of your entire existence, and it cost you an hour of scrubbing a week, paid with your own hands, and you understand the Queen a little through it. If a fresh smock feels like this to a laundress, what must it feel like to be Elizabeth, and have this feeling made new for you twice a day by other people, forever, and never once think about the thumbs? Day 7 is a Sunday, and Sunday changes the shape of everything without lightening it much. The wash-house fires are banked. No bucking today, no soap, Sabbath rules. But linen must still move, the airing must be tended, the tally kept, and the whole household must be got to chapel looking like the household of a Protestant queen, which means this morning is ruffs. You have not touched the ruffs before. The ruffs are Mistress Twister's own art, hers and her senior woman's, and what you are permitted to do this morning is watch and fetch, and watching is an education in itself. The ruff in this year is not yet the great cartwheel it will become, that madness is 20 years off, but it is already a precise, expensive, infuriating architecture of linen, a band of fine cloth pleated into figure-of-8 sets, and it is kept in shape, not with starch. Starch is only now creeping in from the Low Countries, a novelty, suspect, and Mistress Twist calls it Flanders mud, and will not have it near the good linen, but with heat and skill alone. Poking sticks, slim rods of wood and bone heated at the fire and slid into each pleat to set it, 1 pleat at a time, 40, 60, 80 pleats to a band, each one a small negotiation between hot bone and thin cloth, with scorching waiting 1 breath of inattention away. The senior woman, a silent Norfolk widow called Mother Ellen, does this for 2 hours without appearing to breathe. Her hands are terrible to look at and precise beyond belief. Watching her set pleats is like watching someone play an instrument that fights back, and while she works and you fetch and the fire ticks, Mistress Twisty stands at the long table with the 2 tally books and counts. This is the other Sunday labour, the weekly reckoning, every piece of the Queen's body linen in and out against the books. Smocks, so many, night smocks, head cloths, neck cloths, bath linens, extraordinary this week, entered in red. The mistress counts aloud, low, and Mother Ellen answers each count with a grunt, and the pile on the table diminishes as each piece is verified, folded, and pressed away, and you are half asleep on your feet in the warmth watching this liturgy of cloth, when the counting stops, not slows, stops. Mistress Twist stands very still, 1 hand flat on a folded smock, her eyes on the book. Then she counts the pile again, silently this time, her lips moving. Then she turns back one page and comes forward again, finger under the line. Bodycloth, she says. Fine, small. Yesterday's wash. The birthday wash. The book gives 12 out and 12 in. There are 11 on this table, says Mother Ellen. The fire ticks. Out in the yard a gull screams and is gone downwind. You stand holding a poking stick you have forgotten is in your hand, and you watch 2 women with 60 years of this work between them go, in 1 second, from craftswomen to something else, something narrow-eyed and cold and fast, and you understand that you are watching the alarm you are told about, the one that a missing cloth sets off, and it does not look like shouting. It looks like silence with edges. Count the presses, Mistress Twisty says. All of them. Nan, the baskets, every seam of them. Joan. Your name in her mouth for the 2nd time ever. Stand by the door, she says. Nobody in, nobody out. And think, girl, while you stand there, yesterday's wash. You carried yesterday's linen to the ground and back. I want the whole of yesterday out of your head and onto my table. Every step of it, every soul who came within 10 feet of a basket before the bell rings for chapel. And she looks at you, and there is nothing cruel in her face, that's the horror of it. There is only arithmetic. The same arithmetic Nan taught you on the drying ground. 1 name, 1 girl, what the room can afford to lose. And you stand at the door of the hot, bright room with your heart going like a fist on wood, and you begin, because you have no choice at all, to remember Wednesday. And yesterday you realise, as your mind runs back down its stairs and passages, yesterday was the day of the yellow mark. Yesterday was the day of the man in fine dark wool, who stood in your path and smiled and asked you to set the linen down on the sill, and rest your arms, and let him see nobody troubled you. Yesterday is a room in your memory, and you're opening its door very slowly, very carefully, because you already know that something is standing behind it. Here is yesterday, laid out on the table of your mind the way the mistress wants it laid on hers. Before dawn, the smocks come down from the chamber in the locked hamper, carried by 2 grooms, received at the wash-house door by Mother Ellen, counted in. 12 small body-cloths among them, and the smocks, and 1 smock has a yellow mark on the inside of the shoulder-fold. You are set to it. You scrub it out. You mean to report it, and the day explodes instead. The bath is called, the room turns over, you carry the bath sheets up 3 flights, a man in fine dark wool stops you in the low passage, you refuse him, you deliver at the door, you come down, and the rest of the day is bath linen coming back in relays. Wet mountains of it, boiled, wrung, hauled to the ground, spread on the hedges in a rising wind with Nan while she tells you about Meg, brought in at dusk half dry because of the rain smell, hung on the inside lines overnight. Counted? You didn't count. Counting isn't yours. The counting happens at the door and in the books, and the books say 12 came in, and now there are 11, and somewhere between the boiling and the wringing and the yard and the lines, 1 small cloth of the Queen's body stopped existing, or was made to stop existing. You stand at the door while the room is turned out around you. The presses are emptied shelf by shelf. Every folded pile shaken open and refolded. Mother Ellen's terrible hands moving through the linen like a gleaner. Nan takes the baskets apart, turns them over, runs her fingers along the withy seams where a small cloth could work itself into the weave, and finds a hairpin, a dried sprig of rosemary, and nothing. The buck-tubs are tipped and looked under. The space behind the coppers, where a cloth blown from a line might have lodged, is raked with a broom handle and gives up ash and a mouse's nest. The drying ground is walked, hedge by hedge, line by line, the grass gone over on hands and knees, the corner where the wall meets the gate checked twice, and the woman who sat watch in the yard all day, a steady soul called Bess with 14 years in the room, stands in the middle of it going whiter and whiter, because the yard was hers, and she is doing her own arithmetic about what the room can afford to lose. And nothing. By the time the chapel bell goes, and it goes and is ignored, the mistress will answer for chapel later, and everyone knows what that means about how serious this is. The room has been unmade and remade, and there is no 12th cloth in it. Mistress Twist stands at the table with both hands flat on the wood and thinks. You can watch her do it. It is like watching a millstone turn. Then she says, "The fault is in my room, so the word is mine to carry, and it goes up today, now from me, before it can go up from anyone else." And she looks around the room slowly, at Bess, at Nan, at Mother Ellen, at you, and she says, "Hear me. A cloth astray inside these walls is a laundry matter. I will make it a laundry matter, and I will keep it one if it costs me skin. But if any word of this crosses that threshold before I've carried it up the right stair, if I hear of it from the buttery or the woodyard or some gentleman's smiling man before my betters hear it from my mouth, then it is no longer a laundry matter, it is a tale. And tales about the Queen's body linen do not stay tales. They grow teeth. Do you all understand what I am saying? Nothing has happened until I have said what has happened." And she takes off her working apron and puts on the good one from the peg, plain and blinding white. Her own certificate worn where it can be inspected, and she goes out to climb the stairs you climbed yesterday, to stand at a door as you stood at a door, and to hand upward, instead of warm linen, one sentence with her whole life folded inside it. The room breathes out when the door shuts, and then it does not know what to do with itself, because there is no work, it is Sunday, and there is nothing but the waiting, and the waiting is a physical thing, a pressure in the ears, and it is in the middle of that pressure that you finally do what you should have done yesterday. You cross the room to Nan, who is sitting on the basket she took apart, and you say, "Lo, I have to tell the mistress something when she comes back, and I think I have to tell you first, so you can tell me how bad it is." And you tell her. The yellow mark, inside the fold, against the skin side, scrubbed out, bleached out, never reported because the bath swallowed the morning. And then the man in the passage, fine dark wool, dry shoes, who knew about the bath before he should have, who wanted the linen set down on a sill, who wanted, you understand now, saying it out loud for the first time and hearing what it is, 1 minute alone with the Queen's bath linen at arm's reach, and who laughed when you refused. Nan does not say anything for a long time. Her face does a thing you haven't seen it do, which is close completely, like a shop at curfew. Then she says quietly, "Describe him again. The wool, the shoes, his hands. Did you see his hands? Ink, you say, and you didn't know you knew it until it comes out of your mouth, memory handing you the detail like a pickpocket returning a purse. There was ink on the side of his right hand, the way it smudges when you write a great deal and rest your hand on the wet page. A clerk, Nan says, a writing man, on the privy stairs on a Bath morning forewarned. And she stands up off the basket, and for the first time in 7 days you see that Nan, fast-mouthed, unshockable, whopping-born Nan, is frightened, and she says, "You tell the mistress the moment her foot is through that door, before she has her apron off. Everything, both things, the mark and the man, in that order, and you do not soften one word of it to save yourself, because here is what I think, chick, and God send I'm wrong. I think the mark and the man are one story. I think the cloth that's missing isn't lost. I think it's taken. And I think whoever took it wanted it dirty. Wanted it dirty. Sit inside that phrase for a moment, the way you have to, standing in the banked warmth of the washhouse, with your pulse loud in your ears, because it is the hinge on which your whole understanding of this place turns. A clean cloth of the Queen's is worth money. A soiled one, in the marketplace of this century's fears, is worth more, and worth it to worse people, to the poisoner's trade, because a cloth that lies against the skin will carry back traces of whatever the skin has been anointed with. And there are men in this city, apothecaries of the shadier lanes, foreign gentlemen with letters of credit, who would pay simply to learn what the Queen's physicians rub into her, what she smells of, what she sweats. To the intelligencers, the ambassadors' men, because the state of the Queen's body is the greatest open question in Europe, and her linen is its most honest witness. Blood, or no blood, and when, and how much, a calendar of the royal courses assembled from stolen cloth, sold to Spain, sold to France, weighed in Rome. And to the cunning trade, the witches and the wise men and the casters of figures, because a cloth carrying the sweat of the body is, in the belief of the age, a handle on the soul, and image magic against the Queen's life is not a peasant superstition. It is a thing her council loses sleep over, a thing men will hang for within the decade. 3 markets, 1 small cloth, and a 16-year-old girl from Kent standing in the middle of the story with an unreported mark already on her ledger. You could run. The thought arrives whole, fully formed, shameful, and reasonable. You could be out of the gate before the mistress returns, down to the carrier's yard by the Charing Cross, home to Kent in 2 days, and be Joan Marbury who didn't care for London, and no one would ever come after a laundry girl of 7 days. The room can afford to lose you. That's the whole point. That has been the point since Nan explained it on the drying ground. And that is exactly why you can't. Because if you run, you hand them the story with a bow on it. Girl scrubs out an unexplained mark, tells no one, a cloth goes missing the same day, girl flees. They would not even need to look for the clerk. Why would they? The tale would be complete without him. And tales, the mistress said, grow teeth, and this one would grow them straight into Mistress Twist, who chose your hands, and Bess, who kept the yard, and Nan and Mother Ellen, and the whole small, hot, honest room that has fed you and taught you and shielded you for 7 days. Your absence would be the evidence. Your staying is the only testimony you have, so you stay. You stand by the cold end of the long table with your hands folded so they won't shake. And when the door opens an hour later and Mistress Twist comes in with her good apron still blinding and her face like a door, you cross the room before your courage can find its excuses, and you say, Mistress, before anything else, I must tell you 2 things, and they are both my fault to tell. And you tell her both things, in order. You do not soften one word. What happens next, you will replay for the rest of your life, in bad nights and good ones, because it teaches you more about this world in 3 minutes than the whole week before it. She does not shout. She does not go white, or grip the table, or call you wretch. She listens the way a physician listens to a chest, with her whole attention and no expression at all, and when you're done she asks questions, and every question is a scalpel. Which shoulder of the smock? Inside of the fold, you're sure. The colour of the mark, yellow like what? Like butter, like straw, like old ivory? Did it smell? Think. You had it under your nose an hour, girl. Everything smells. Did it smell of tallow, of oil, of nothing? and you close your eyes and put yourself back at the buck tub, steam, lye, wet stone, and underneath them faint. At the first moment you lifted the cloth before the lye ate everything, there was a sweetness, not perfume, sweet like meat, like fat, like the smell around the candle store, but softer. Ambergris, says Mother Ellen from across the room, the first full word she has spoken all day. And Mistress Twist closes her eyes for 1 second, which is her whole vocabulary of despair, because ambergris, whale wax, the grey gold of the perfumer's trade, worth more than its weight in silver, is not a substance that drips from a servant's candle. Ambergris is what the great anoint themselves with. Ambergris on the skin side of a royal smock could be innocent. An over-perfumed glove pressed to a folded pile. A lady's greased hands in the wrong place. Or ambergris is a carrier, because every poisoner in Italy knows what every perfumer knows, that scent fats hold whatever you dissolve in them and give it slowly to warm skin, and a folded smock is a very good place to put something you wish to lie against a body for a night. It was probably nothing. Hear that plainly, because the mistress says it too, and she is right. 9 chances in 10 it was a perfumed glove and a careless fold upstairs before it ever came down. But nobody in this room is paid to bet on 9 chances in 10. The room exists. The locks and tallies and rules and the whole hard weather of Mistress Twist exist precisely for the 10th chance, and the 10th chance now has 3 legs to stand on. A mark that should not be there, a cloth that is not there, and a man with ink on his hand who knew what he should not know and asked for what he should not ask. The mistress takes off the good apron, folds it once and puts it over her arm, and you realise she's going back up the stairs. Now, again, to unsay her 1-sentence report and say a longer, far more dangerous one, and this time she says Joan. You'll come with me. Up the stairs, she says, to a room where a gentleman will ask you questions. You will answer everything, plainly in order as you did to me. You will not guess, you will not decorate, and above all, girl, listen to me now. You will not be clever. Clever is what they watch for. You are a laundress. You saw cloth and a man in a passage. You know linen, and you know nothing else in the world. That ignorance is the only armour I can send you up in, and it is good armour, if you keep it on. She looks at you a moment longer, and something almost warm moves at the very bottom of her eyes, like a coin at the bottom of a well. You did wrong to keep the mark quiet, she says, and you did right to bring it me before you were caught out, and righter still on the stair, when you kept the linen off that sill. 1 wrong and 2 rights, in your first week, with nobody watching you. That's better odds than most souls in this palace can show. Now walk behind me, keep your eyes down, and let us go and be small, truthful people in a large room. And so, for the 2nd time in 2 days, you climb into the body of the palace, past the kitchen heat and the beeswax stratum and the ghost of civet, past the door with the iron studs, up the 4 odd steps, but this time you turn away from the bathing chamber along a gallery where the rush matting silences your feet. So completely it's like walking on held breath, to a small door, and behind the small door a small room, and in the small room a table. 2 candles burning in daylight, which for some reason frightens you more than anything yet, and a man. Not your man. You see that in the first heartbeat, with a relief that nearly buckles you. This man is older, grey through the beard, in black, with tired, clever eyes and a gaze that touches you once, completely, like cold water, and then returns to the papers in front of him. He does not tell you his name. Men like this do not spend their names on laundresses, but you will learn later, much later, from Nan, who learned everything, that he is one of the quiet gentlemen who serve Sir William Cecil, the Queen's secretary, the grey spider at the centre of every web in this building, and that rooms like this one, small, warm, 2 candles, no window you can be seen from, are where the 10th chances of the realm are weighed. Sit, he says. There is a stool. You sit. Now, he says, and dips his pen. From the beginning, and leave nothing out, however small. Small things are my trade. You talk for what feels like an hour and is probably less than half of one. He writes while you talk, not everything, and part of your mind, the part that will not stop working even now, notices what makes his pen move. The mark makes it move. The inside of the fold makes it move twice. The bath sheets, the root, the low passage, and then the man. And at the man the pen stops entirely, and the tired eyes come up and stay on you, and he takes you through it word by word. And this is where you discover something about yourself that you will carry out of this room like a stolen candle. You remember. You remember the way frightened people remember. Everything. In colours. The fine dark wool. London black. New dyed. No shine of wear at the elbow. The dry shoes on a wet day. The ink on the right hand along the side of the little finger smudged fresh. The voice. Easy. Southern. A gentleman's schooling in it, but something underneath. Some other county drowned in it long ago. And the words. Exactly. So it's true then. Today. Not is the Queen bathing. So it's true. A man confirming, not discovering. A man who had been told and was checking his purchase. The gentleman in black writes that phrase down twice. Then he asks the question you have been dreading, so gently that the gentleness itself is a blade. And the mark, he says, you washed it out, before anyone had seen it but you. Why? And your armour is ignorance. And the beautiful thing, the thing that saves you, is that the ignorance is true. Because I'm a laundress, sir, you say, and your voice cracks on it and you let it crack. A mark on the linen is my failing until it's out. I thought it was tallow. I thought I'd be beaten for carrying it careless. I didn't know enough to be frightened of the right thing. I know linen. I don't know. And you gesture helplessly at the room, the candles, the papers, him. I don't know any of this. He looks at you for a long moment. Somewhere below in the palace a door booms, and a gull goes over the roof, crying. No, he says at last, and there is something in his voice that in another man you would call kindness, worn down to the metal. No, you don't. Keep it that way as long as ever you can. He asks a few more things. Whether you could know the man again. Yes. Whether he touched the linen at any moment to the breadth of one finger. No. You're certain. Yes, sir. 'Cause I'd have felt it in the weight, sir. He almost smiles at that, the pen moving again, and then he sands the page and stands, and it is over, except that it is not, because at the door he says, without looking up, one thing more. You'll be in chapel, in the hall, at the wash, about the yards, in the natural way of your work. If you see him, that man, at any hour in any company, you will not look at him twice. You will not change a face. And you will find Mistress Twist and say to her one word, and the word is Holland, and she will know what to do. Say it back to me. Holland, you say. Good girl, he says, and opens the door, and you go down all the stairs of the palace with that single word sitting in your chest like a swallowed coal. What happens above your head in the following days, you piece together only in fragments, the way the small piece together everything, from the pattern of disturbances. The locked hamper now comes down with 3 grooms instead of 2, and one of them is a new man with a soldier's way of standing. A gentleman you've never seen walks the drying ground wall on Monday, looking at the broken glass along the top, and says nothing to anyone. The underclerks of the household, dozens of them, ink-handed men in dark wool, everyone, are, Nan reports from her web of kitchen friends, being called in ones and twos to have their duties reviewed, a phrase that has never before been heard in the palace and empties the buttery of gossip for a week because everyone is too frightened to talk. And the yellow mark, the missing cloth, Meg's scorch, the whole hidden ledger of the room, none of it is ever spoken of aloud again by anyone at any time. The mistress's wall held. It is a laundry matter. Nothing has happened because she said what happened in the right order, up the right stair. And you begin to understand that this exactly is what 30 years in the room has taught her. Not washing. Washing you learned in a month. 30 years teaches you the stairs. And your own week, your first week, the week you were promised would decide whether you'd survive, ends not with a verdict but with Monday, because that is the truth of service. There is no verdict. There is only more work, and the work is the mercy. Monday is a full wash day. Monday is lie and steam and the slap of wet Holland on the boards, your split thumb reopening in the first hour and settling into its familiar hot thread of pain. Nan's voice running low and constant at your shoulder, Mother Ellen's poking sticks ticking on their stand, Bess back at her stool in the yard with her mending and both eyes open, and around midday, without any announcement, Mistress Twisty sets you, alone, unsupervised, to iron a plain headcloth, your first, and stands with her back to you the entire time, watching you in the reflection of the copper, and you spit test the iron, and stroke the rag first, and lay the linen fair, and work the smoothing iron in long, even passes with your whole tired arm behind it, and the cloth comes up flat and white and blameless as snow, and she takes it from you at the end, looks at it once and says, and puts it in the press. You will live on that for a month. That evening, for the first time, you climb to the leads. Nan shows you the way, up the last ladder past your attic, out a low door onto the roof of the world, where the laundry women go on fine evenings to sit with their backs against a warm chimney stack and their ruined hands open in the cool air, and you come out into the light and stop breathing for a second, because there it is. London, the whole smoking, glittering, impossible animal of it, laid out from your feet to the edge of the sky. The river first, broad and brown gold in the low sun, so thick with boats it seems you could cross on their backs, wherries and tilt boats and barges and a tall ship easing down on the ebb with her sails half set, and along both banks the city climbing over itself, gables and chimneys and church towers past counting. 100 parishes breathing coal smoke into the evening, until the air over the rooftops is a soft blue haze shot through with gold. Eastward, old St. Paul's stands up out of the smoke on its hill, still the tallest thing in the kingdom, its great spire like a needle in the sky, and you do not know, nobody knows, that the following year lightning will find that spire and burn it, and it will never be rebuilt. So you are looking, this evening, at something almost no one alive in your listener's world has ever seen. Below you, near, the palace spreads its courts and gardens and its tilt yard, and the smoke of its dozens of kitchens goes up straight in the still air, and somewhere under one particular stretch of lead and timber, behind one particular window catching the sun, is a red-haired woman of 26 with the whole of this in her hand, whose smock you scrubbed this morning, who does not know you're alive. Best view in England, Nan says, and cracks a hazelnut on the chimney brick with the heel of her hand. And it's ours, chick. They've the galleries and the gardens, and we've the roof. I'd not trade. And sitting there with your back against the warm brick and your hands aching their slow, honest ache, and the bells beginning across the water, all of them, near and far, deep and shrill, disagreeing about the hour, you find that you would not trade either, which is either the beginning of belonging or the beginning of being spent, and you are 16, and you cannot yet tell the difference, and the bells go on ringing, and the light goes long and gold, and far below, on the drying ground hedges, the last of the day's linen glows white as sails. The weeks that follow teach you the deep grammar of the place, the things underneath the rules, and chief among them is this: the Queen's cleanliness is not a habit, it is a policy. It is performance with the whole of Europe for an audience, and once you see that, you cannot stop seeing it. Elizabeth is fastidious the way other monarchs are warlike, deliberately, publicly, as a statement of what kind of reign this is. Her father's court glittered, hers gleams. She cannot bear a foul smell, and the whole palace knows it, and orders itself around the knowledge. The sweetened rushes, the strewing herbs, meadow sweet and germander crushed underfoot in her galleries, so each footstep releases green scent. The perfumer's bills that come through the counting-house, rosewater by the gallon, Benjamin and Storax for the burning pans, sweet bags sewn into the very upholstery. Her ladies are chosen partly, though no one says so, for the sweetness of their persons, because they stand and sleep within arm's reach of her, and a queen who is nose-proud cannot be attended by anyone who isn't. Ambassadors write home about her. Her cleanliness, her linen, the whiteness of her hands, which she knows are beautiful and shows deliberately, long pale fingers against dark velvet, hands that have never been in lie in their lives, and part of your strange education this spring is realizing that those famous hands and your ruined ones are two ends of a single machine. Her hands can be what they are because yours are what they are. The whiteness has to be made somewhere, and it is made in your room, out of ash and fat and steam and skin. And the performance has an enemy, and the enemy is not dirt. Dirt is easy. Dirt surrenders to lie. The enemy is the age itself, the whole surrounding fact of what a human body is in 1560, and no rank protects against it. And this is the part of the story where I have to be honest with you about what even the cleanest woman in England lives inside. Her teeth are going. Everyone's teeth are going who can afford the reason. Sugar, the new luxury, pouring in from the Atlantic trade, in marchpane and comfits and suckets and syrups, and the great eat it as a display of wealth, precisely because it is dear, and their teeth blacken in proportion to their income, and the physician's remedies, toothcloths dipped in honey, powders of pumice and burnt alum, and, God help everyone, sugar itself ground fine. Scrub the enamel thinner while feeding the rot. The Queen at 26 still has a fair smile. The Queen at 50 will speak to foreign envoys through teeth so decayed that they will write home saying they could not always understand her, and one of them will note that her teeth are black, and add kindly that the English seem prone to this from their great use of sugar. Cloves for the pain. Oil of cloves on a scrap of your linen, held against a screaming molar through a council meeting about war. Her face, and every court face, lives under paint, And the paint is a slow enemy too, though this decade doesn't fully know it yet. The fashion is whiteness, an unearthly lily whiteness that says, this skin has never seen field labour, never seen sun, never seen want, and the finest white is ceruse, white lead ground in vinegar, smoothed over face and neck and bosom, luminous, flattering by candlelight, and quietly poisonous, drying the skin it covers, etching it, greying it, so that more paint is needed to cover what the paint has done. A debt compounding on a woman's face year by year. Rouge of cochineal or red ochre over it. Lips of vermilion, which is mercury, and belladonna, some ladies use, dropped in the eyes to widen the dark of them. Nightshade, the name is right there in the plant. Beauty in this court is a slow negotiation with the apothecary's poison shelf, and everyone half knows it. And the fashion does not care, because the fashion is not about beauty. It is about rank made visible, and rank made visible is worth dying for by degrees. You see the ladies' women sometimes in the passages carrying the little pots and the brushes, and you and they nod to each other, tradeswomen of the same trade at bottom, the manufacture of appearances, her courses, her health, her physic, bloodletting by calendar and by the astrologer's advice, purges of rhubarb and senna that scour the body for its own good, the doctrine of humours sitting over every ache, blood and phlegm, and the two biles to be balanced like accounts. When she is ill, and she is ill this very autumn we're speaking of her weight, hold that thought, because it's coming. When she is ill, the treatment is as dangerous as most disease, and around her, around all of it, the vermin, the one court society everyone belongs to, fleas in the rushes, in the bed hangings, in the seams of gowns that are never washed, lice, body and head, so universal that the delousing comb is an intimate courtesy, that fine ladies keep little furs, zibellini, sable skins on golden chains. Partly the story goes to draw the fleas to the fur and away from the skin. Your own war you fight and mostly win, because you have what nobody above you has. Boiled linen weekly and a trade's worth of knowledge. And there is a joke Nan makes that is not a joke, that the cleanest skins in this palace belong to the Queen and her laundresses, the top of the ladder and the bottom, and everyone between is a walking parish of small livestock in silk. Meals, hands washed at table, always, rosewater poured over the fingers from the ewer, because all England eats with knife and fingers from shared dishes. The fork is an Italian affectation that will take another 50 years to conquer this island. And so the washing of hands is not nicety. It is the whole of food safety, performed as ceremony, because ceremony is how this age makes people actually do things. The Queen's own dishes tasted before her by gentlemen whose job description is to die first. Her table linen, acres of it, damask cloths and napkins changed course by course, flowing through washes one level above yours, and you know the women who do them, and their thumbs look like yours. This is the world the smock goes up into every morning, twice a day, white as an unwritten page. That is the entire meaning of your work. You finally understand it whole, some evening on the leads with your hands cooling in the dark. The linen is the one thing in the Queen's world that gets to start over. The teeth cannot start over. The painted skin cannot. The politics cannot. The body cannot. But every morning, out of your room, up those stairs, comes one thing with no history at all, blank, warm, smelling of rosemary and sunlight, and for the moment of putting it on, The most surrounded woman in Europe is touched by something that asks nothing, records nothing, and carries nothing but the labour of people she will never see. You've begun to be proud of it, carefully, privately, the way you'd carry a candle in wind. And pride in this palace is always alone, and autumn is coming, and autumn of 1560 is going to call the loan in, because in October the news will come up the river that changes everything, and shortly after it the fear will come to the palace that nearly kills the Queen, and empties the court like a tipped bucket, and both of them are going to run straight through your room. But first, summer, because your body earns the autumn, and summer in a Tudor washhouse is its own ordeal, and I want you to live it, month by compressed month, the way you lived it. June, and the room becomes an oven inside an oven. The coppers cannot rest, the fires cannot bank, and outside the walls London itself is heating like a midden, the Thames dropping in its bed, the mud flats widening, the smell at low tide climbing over the palace wall like an invading army. This is the season the physicians dread, the season of fluxes and fevers, when the miasma theory feels most true because the air genuinely is a soup, and the court begins its summer removes, Greenwich, then the great slow caterpillar of a progress into the countryside, hundreds of carts, the Queen's own bed and bathtub and close stool travelling with her, her clean world packed in straw and carried on axles, and the body linen travels under lock with Mistress Twist, riding beside the cart like a woman escorting a coffin. You see England from the back of a laundry wagon that summer. Hedgerows, church towers, staring villages, children running alongside for a mile at a time, and at every great house that receives the court you set up the whole machine again in whatever brewhouse or barn is given you, and you learn to make royal white out of strange water, hard water, pond water, water with iron in it that wants to yellow everything, and Mistress Twist teaches you the corrections like a physician adjusting doses. More lye here, less soap there, vinegar in the rinse. And you understand that her craft is not a set of rules, but a long conversation with water, and every county speaks a different dialect. Your hands, by August, have become the hands the trade promised you. The splits have healed and split and healed, until the skin across your knuckles is a glazed pink shine that feels distant, like gloves. You can lift wet linen all day. You can wring a sheet with Nan, the two of you twisting against each other like a windlass, and feel the water leave the cloth in one long muscular gout. And there is a satisfaction in it now, deep in the shoulders, that you would be embarrassed to call happiness, and cannot honestly call anything else. September brings the court back toward the river, and September brings the news. It comes the way all news comes to you, downward and sideways, from a groom to a kitchen woman to Nan to the room, hours ahead of any official word, and the room goes quiet in the way you have learned means politics. Amy Dudley is dead. Wife of Lord Robert Dudley, the Queen's master of the horse, the Queen's favourite, the man half the court whispers she loves and the other half whispers it too, only nastier. Found at the foot of a staircase in a house near Oxford with her neck broken, on a day she'd sent all her servants away, and within a week every tongue in England and every ambassador's cipher in Europe is saying the same word, and the word is murder. And the question inside the word is, for whom? You would think this has nothing to do with laundry. It has everything to do with laundry, because scandal is a contagion, and the court's response to contagion is always the same. Seal the body. The Queen's person, her rooms, her food, her linen, everything that touches her tightens by one turn of the screw. because a throne under scandal is a throne that enemies test, and her council knows it, and the quiet gentlemen in the small rooms know it, and within days the hamper comes down with a written tally sealed inside it that must match Mistress Twist's count to the piece before the grooms will leave, and the drying ground watch doubles, and every soul in your room feels the palace walls thicken around them like ice forming. Nobody explains. Nobody needs to. You have been here long enough now to read the building the way sailors read sky. And it is in the middle of that tightened autumn, in October, that the fear arrives, and the fear is fever. It starts, as it always starts, with a rumour from the city. Sickness in the parishes eastward, the searchers busy, the bills of mortality creeping. Then it is closer. Sickness in Westminster, a house shut up within sight of the palace gate, a red cross on a door your own errands have walked past. And then it is inside the outer courts, or the fear of it is, which functionally is the same thing, a scullion of the kitchens burning hot taken out of the palace on a hurdle at dawn before most of the household is awake. And by dinner time the whole vast building knows, and the whole vast building is doing sums because everyone in it has stood in a crowd with that boy, eaten bread. His hands may have carried, breathed, and this is the point. Breathed the air he breathed because air is how it travels. Everyone knows air is how it travels, and there is no way to stop sharing air. You want to know what fear smells like in a Tudor palace. It smells of burning. Within a day the braziers are lit in every gallery and yard, juniper and rosemary and pitched pine, frankincense in the Queen's side, whole rooms fogged blue with corrective smoke, because if foul air kills, then sweet smoke is armour, and the palace burns perfume against death, the way a town burns beacons against invasion. People go about with pomanders pressed to their faces, with sprigs of rue and wormwood in their fists, with vinegar-soaked cloths, and the apothecaries of the Strand sell out of treacle and mithridatium, the great compound antidotes, 60 ingredients boiled to a paste, viper's flesh among them, and lords who dine off silver spoon it down like porridge. And the court does what the court does. It moves. The word comes down on the second evening, remove to Windsor, and the palace turns itself inside out in 36 hours, and this time you understand what you are watching, because you have read the deep grammar. This is the great engine of avoidance, the migration reflex, the oldest and only reliable medicine this age owns. You cannot cure the fever. You can leave. Distance is the one drug that works, and the rich buy it by the mile, and the poor stay in the parishes and are counted weekly in the bills, and that arithmetic, who can afford to run and who must stand still and take it, is the truest map of rank in England, truer than any procession. The remove is chaos with a rigid spine, and in the middle of the chaos, on the last morning with the wash-house half stripped and the carts groaning in the yard, it happens, the thing the whole year has been aiming at you like a slow arrow. Bess comes in from the drying ground at a walk that is trying very hard not to be a run, and her face has gone the colour of the linen, and she says, "Mistress, the small press, the one we packed first, that stood the night in the cart-yard under guard, the seal on it is broken, and the count inside is wrong. And this time it is not one small body-cloth. This time, on the morning the court flees a fever, with the palace boiling like a kicked hive, and every stranger in England seemingly inside the gates loading carts. What is missing from the broken press is one of the Queen's own night smocks, worn, unwashed, carried down that very dawn, still holding. There is no delicate way to say this, and the age would not want one. still holding the sweat of the Queen's body on the night before her court ran from a plague. A worn smock, a frightened city, and every wise woman, poisoner, and intelligencer in Europe knowing exactly what such a thing is worth in a season when all the world is asking one question: will the Queen of England catch it? Will the Queen of England die? You hear the word before the mistress says it. You watch it travel up through her body, and you are already moving, already turning toward the passage door and the stairs, because you know what your errand is going to be, and your legs have decided before your courage has voted. Holland, says Mistress Twisty. Girl, run. And for the first time in your entire service, in that palace where you do not exist, where you keep your eyes down and hug the wall and pass unseen, you pick up your skirts in both fists and you run through the middle of everything, through grooms and carts and shouting men, up the spine of Whitehall with your pattern-shod feet cracking on the stone like musket fire, 16 years old, carrying one word. The stairs have never been this full. The whole hidden bloodstream of the palace is hemorrhaging toward the cart-yards. Men with chests on their shoulders, boys with armfuls of hangings, and you go up against the current like a fish. Holland, Holland, and you take an elbow in the ribs that will bloom purple by evening, and you do not feel it until evening. And at the third landing a porter with a strong-box bellows at you to give way, and you do not give way. You duck under his arm, which is a dismissible offence on an ordinary day. And this is not an ordinary day, and you come out into the gallery passage running full stretch on the rush matting, silent as a dream of running, and there at the end of it, by the mercy of whatever saint watches over laundresses, is the door you need, and at the door the same groom of the chamber, scarlet and black, and beside him, in urgent low conversation, grey through the beard, in the same black he was wearing in the small room in the spring, your gentleman, Cecil's man. He sees you coming. You watch him read your face at 20 feet the way you'd read a mark on linen, instantly, completely, and he steps away from the groom to meet you, and you have breath for exactly one word, so you spend it. Holland, you say. What happens in the next hour you see only pieces of, but the pieces are enough to teach you what the quiet gentleman of this kingdom can do when the 10th chance stops being a chance. The cart-yard gates shut, all of them, in the space of minutes, with the remove half-loaded and lord servants howling at the porters, and the porters who answer to a different master this morning not caring. Every cart already gone is named, and riders go out the King Street gate at a canter to overtake them on the Windsor Road. And every soul in the yards, every carter, every hired porter, every helpful stranger who came in with the chaos of the remove, because chaos is a door, and someone opened this chaos on purpose or seized it fast, every one of them passes out through a single gate, one at a time between two lines of men, and among the watchers, standing where she can see every face without being seen, in her blinding apron, arms folded like a gate bar, Mistress Anne Twist, who has handled the Queen's linen for 30 years, and who would know its whiteness, Nan swears, through a sack, in the dark, by smell. But it is not the mistress who finds it, and it is not the gentleman, it is you, because you are stood at his shoulder to say again exactly what the broken press looked like, and you're therefore facing the yard when the line moves, and in the line, among 50 tired, angry men, there is one who is doing everything correctly. That's what catches you. Everyone else is furious or frightened or loud, stamping, cursing the delay, craning at the gate. One man, halfway back, a carrier's smock over good shoes, is calm. patient, eyes down, taking no more space than he must. Behaving, you realise, with the floor of your stomach dropping away, exactly the way you were taught to behave on your first morning. Being invisible, doing it well, doing it the way you do it when your life is practised at it, and carriers' men do not practice invisibility. They practice being paid, and underneath the hood of the smock, along the side of the right hand hanging quiet against his thigh, there is a grey smudge that might be cart grease and might be ink. You do not look at him twice. You are told, and the telling holds you like a hand on the neck. You will not look at him twice, you will not change your face. You turn your head slowly back to the gentleman as if finishing your sentence about the press, and in the same low voice, the voice for describing linen, you say, "Halfway down the line, sir. Carrier's smock, brown, patched at the left shoulder, dry shoes." He was in the low passage in the spring. You never see the arrest. That is the truth, and I will not decorate it, because this story has been honest with you all night, and it is not going to start lying now, at the hour when you're heaviest. The gentleman touches two men on the shoulder and walks away down the yard at the pace of a man checking a wheel, and you are sent instantly elsewhere, out of sight, back down the stairs with the groom walking beside you the whole way like a wall that has learned to move, and behind you the yard makes a noise. Once, brief, boots and a shout cut off, and then the ordinary roar of the remove closes back over it like water over a dropped stone. You do not see the night smock come home, but it comes home that evening at Windsor, carried into the temporary washroom by the gentleman himself, folded in a plain wrapper, and he puts it into Mistress Twister's hands with a small nod, one craftsman to another, and to you, standing at the coppers with your sleeves rolled and your heart still not right in your chest. He says only this, and then is gone forever, out of your story, back into the walls of the kingdom. You looked once. Good girl. Most people can't stop at once. And Nan, later, on a strange roof, because Windsor has leads too, and laundresses find them within a day. Everywhere, always. It is a law of nature. Nan cracks her hazelnut and hands you half and delivers the verdict of the only court whose opinion you have ever actually cared about. "You'll do, chick," she says. "You'll do." What was he? The man with the ink? You never learn all of it, and neither will I pretend to. A clerk of the household, Nan's web reports months later in pieces. A real clerk, real duties, real wages, and a second wage from a goldsmith's house in Lombard Street where a certain foreign gentleman's bills were paid, and whether the linen was wanted for the poison fear, or the calendar spies, or the image magic, or simply for silver by a man who had found the one soft seam in the hardest household in England, the seam of chaos on a moving day, that answer went wherever such answers go, into a small room with 2 candles, and never came out. He was not hanged, or not that year, or not that you ever heard. Things in this palace do not end with drums. They end with a man's name never being spoken again, a set of duties quietly reassigned, and a new rule in your room. The seals to be checked at every halt that will outlive everyone who knows why it exists. That is how the palace remembers, in rules with the reasons rubbed off, and 100 years from your night on the Windsor leads, some laundress not yet born will check a seal at a halt on a moving day, and grumble at the fussiness of it, and never know she is touching the fossil of your October, and your run up the stairs, and one word spent like a life savings at the top of them. Holland, just a kind of cloth, the finest, whitest kind, the kind worth guarding. Winter comes to Windsor early, up on its chalk hill above the river, and winter is where I want to slow us down, because winter is when the work turns inward and the story starts to breathe long and deep, the way you're breathing now, or will be soon. Frost by Mr&Mrs. The water in the washroom troughs grows a skin of ice overnight, that you break each morning with a copper dipper, 3 sharp raps, and the sound of it, that bright glassy crunch in the dark before the fires are drawing, becomes the true bell of your day, more than any church. The linen freezes on the lines faster than it dries, comes in stiff as boards, whole smocks standing up by themselves like polite ghosts, and must be thawed and finished at the fire on the racks, and the room in December is the warmest place in the castle, and everyone knows it, and grooms invent errands to stand in your doorway for a minute, red-eared, hands spread to your steam, and Mistress Twister lets them have their minute, exactly a minute before her eyebrow moves them along. The fever burned itself out in the city with the cold, the way it usually does, the bills of mortality sinking week by week, and the court will go back in time to a Whitehall scrubbed and limed and aired, sweetened from the drains up, and the whole cycle will turn again, palace to palace, wash to wash, and you know the rhythm of it now in your body the way you know the rhythm of ringing. The Queen did not sicken. England did not shake. The abyss that everyone stared into that October closed over quietly as it happened. This once, though I'll tell you because you're grown and it's night and we tell each other true things at this hour. 2 years on from your autumn, the fear comes back and does not miss. Smallpox at Hampton Court, and the Queen so far gone that the council gathers around midnight to argue the succession, while she lies senseless, and she survives it, barely, scarred and furious by luck and a bold German physician, and a red cloth, and no thanks whatever to the age's medicine. And the paint on her face grows a little thicker every year after, covering the pox marks, ceruse over scars over fear. The whole architecture of appearance you spent this year learning to build from underneath. She will reign more than 40 years. She will never once in all of them be safe, and she will never once look it. That is the trade she makes every morning when the smock comes up the stairs. But that is her story, and this is yours, and yours tonight ends smaller and better. It ends on an evening in the 12 days of Christmas in the washroom at Windsor, with the fires banked low and the day's linen pressed and put away, and the counting done, both books agreeing, every seal whole. The room smells of soap and warm ash, and the rosemary bundle someone hung from the rack for the season. Bess has gone up. Mother Ellen sits by the fire with her terrible precise hands at rest in her lap for once, palms up, like a statue of a saint of work. Nan is mending by rushlight and talking, of course, a low river of talk about nothing, Wapping, her sister's baby, the sergeant of the woodyard who looks at us in chapel, and you are not really listening and she does not really mind. And Mistress Twist comes to the table where you're folding the last headcloths and puts down in front of you without a word a small parcel wrapped in a scrap of clean rag, and walks away to bank the far fire. Inside the rag is a pair of gloves. Not fine, not a lady's gloves, nothing that would turn a head. Good thick knitted wool, laundresses' gloves, the kind the older women wear on the coldest mornings for the outdoor work, the kind that cost real money out of real wages, and tucked inside the right glove, a little paper twist of goose grease and beeswax salve, the exact receipt, you know because you have watched her make it, that Mistress Twist has rubbed into her own ruined knuckles every winter night for 30 years. That is the whole ceremony. Nobody says anything. Nan doesn't even look up from her mending, though you can hear her smiling. You genuinely can. It changes the sound of her voice. And you sit there in the warm dying light with the gloves in your two scarred hands, your two strong, ugly, clever, trade-taught hands, and you understand that you have been counted. Not in the books, in the other tally, the one the room keeps of itself, the one that decides not what it can afford to lose, but what it means to keep. A year ago you were a girl on a cart with 8p. Now you know things. You know the weight of wet Holland and the voice of a hot iron. You know how to make white out of ash and fat and sunlight, in hard water or soft, in Kent or Middlesex or wherever the great slow animal of the court wanders next. You know the stairs. You know how to be invisible on them, and you know, which is rarer, when to stop being invisible, once, for one word, at a run. You know that the most powerful woman alive is kept alive partly by rooms full of women no one will ever paint, and that this is either an injustice or a secret honour or both at once, and you have decided, on your own roof-warmed evenings, that you can hold both at once, the way you hold a hot iron, firmly, and not for too long. You put the gloves on. They fit. Of course they fit. She's been looking at your hands since the morning she took your chin and turned your face to the light. Outside, the frost is making its small sounds in the dark, the river running black under the castle hill, the watch calling somewhere on the walls, and up past the leads the sky is enormous and clean and pricked everywhere with stars. The smoke of London 40 miles away, and not your problem tonight. Tomorrow there will be lie. Tomorrow there will be the ice to break on the troughs, 3 bright wraps in the dark and the fires to draw, and the hamper coming down under seal, and the whole white machinery of the cleanest court in Christendom to run for one more day on the strength of your shoulders and Nan's talk and Mother Ellen's silence and the mistress's weather-grey watching eyes. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is the banked fire ticking, and the smell of rosemary and wool on your healing hands, and the deep, specific, bone-earned ease of a body that has done its work and is done with its day. You bank your own small fires. You climb to the pallet under the cold leads, and the other women's breathing is already slow around you in the dark, and you pull the blanket to your chin and your hands in their new gloves, because yes, you wore them to bed. Of course you wore them to bed. You're 16. Your hands ache their long, familiar ache, and then slowly, wrapped in warm wool, they stop, and you begin to sink. Listen to the castle settling around you as you go, the timbers ticking as the frost tightens them, a door, far off, closed by a careful hand, the wind finding the same gap in the leads it finds every night, a thin whistling thread of cold air that passes a foot above your face and touches nothing, the watch calling the hour on the walls, the words worn smooth by centuries of saying, "All's well," and whether it is or not, the saying of it is its own kind of truth, a voice in the dark telling the sleeping building that someone is awake so that no one else has to be. Someone is awake. You don't have to be. Your feet are warm. That took an hour. It always takes an hour, but they are warm now. And warmth in 1560 is not a setting on a wall. It is a thing you make and earn and hoard, and you have made it and earned it, and here it is, yours, from your heels to your wrapped hands, a country of warmth exactly the size of your body under one wool blanket, with winter standing all around its borders, held off, held out, for one more night. Your hands have stopped hurting. Feel that. The whole day's ache has gone out of them like water out of wrung cloth, and what's left is only weight. Your hands are so heavy now, heavy as wet linen, too heavy to move, and there is no reason on this earth to move them. The Queen is asleep by now, a mile of corridors away, in boiled white holland that pass through your room, under sheets that pass through someone's room, in a bed hung with cloth no water will ever touch, and her guards are at her doors, and her ladies breathe softly on their pallets around her, and whatever tomorrow is bringing up the river toward her, and something is always coming up the river toward her, it is not here yet. And tonight she is only a young woman asleep in clean linen, the same as you, the exact same as you, the whole vast pyramid of the kingdom flattening out at last every night into this one shared thing, a tired body, a warm bed, a slow breath. Breathe with her then. Breathe with the whole sleeping building, in and out. Like the tide you lived above all year, that great brown breathing of the river, in past the palace and out past the palace, twice a day, every day, carrying everything away, always, eventually carrying everything away. The wash-house is dark now. The coppers are cooling, ticking as they cool, quieter and quieter, longer and longer between ticks. The linen sleeps folded in the presses, white in the dark, blank as snow, no history at all. The books are balanced, the seals are whole. The ice is thickening on the troughs, and it will be there in the morning, and the morning will come, and the 3 bright raps will come, but not yet. Not yet. Centuries will pass. The palace you served will burn, most of it, 100 and some years on, one careless fire in one small room, and the greatest palace in Europe will become a name on maps and one lonely banqueting house, standing by a road full of engines. The river will be walled and tamed and cleaned, so clean one day that fish come back to it, and the tide will still turn twice a day past the place where the drying ground was, and nobody walking there will know. The great spire you saw from the leads will fall to lightning within the year and never rise again, and the cathedral under it will burn in its turn and be rebuilt with a dome you could not imagine. The plagues will end, the fevers will get names, and the names will get cures, and the water will run hot out of walls into white tubs in 100 million houses, and people will stand in falling hot water every single morning for as long as they please, every day, all of them, and think nothing of it, nothing at all. An ocean of warmth poured out daily on ordinary skin, and not one of them will ever once, stepping out, reach for a towel and think of the hands that made towels white before the world was easy. But the feeling will not change. That is the secret, and you can keep it, because you're nearly asleep, and secrets are safe with the nearly asleep. Clean cloth against tired skin, warmth earned and held against the cold, the weight of the day going out of the hands, somebody awake on the walls so that you don't have to be. 400 years of machinery will change everything about how it's made and nothing about how it feels, and the feeling is what you have tonight, in full, the same as a queen, the same as everyone who ever earned an evening. The oldest luxury, the only one that was ever really worth the trouble. Rest. You're warm enough, clean enough, safe enough. You have work that matters and hands that can do it, and people who will notice if you don't come down the ladder in the morning, and that is more than most souls in any century get, and it is enough. It is enough. It is enough. So let it come now. Let sleep take you the way the tide takes the river, without asking, without hurry. The way it took Joan Marbury under the frozen leads at Windsor, 400 and more years ago. A girl with new gloves on her healing hands and nothing left to guard till morning. Let the fires bank. Let the coppers tick themselves silent. Let the watch keep the hours for you. Let your thoughts fold themselves like linen one by one, white side in, and be pressed away smooth, and let the last of them, whatever it is, lie down where it stands. The ice will keep till morning, the whole world will keep till morning. Good night.